I'm the Curator of Aquatics here at Josh's Frogs, and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how to aquascape your natural aquarium. We're going to talk about some of the different hardscape elements, some of the different organic elements, and some of the different live plant elements, and some of the products we offer at Josh's Frogs can help you along the way. We're going to start here with this aquarium as sort of our little demo tank. The first thing you want to consider when getting into your natural aquarium is what kind of substrate you want to use. And you may want to consider also, even before that, what kind of fish you want to keep. That'll sort of dictate what kind of plants you can keep and things like that. But a lot of times the first consideration is what kind of substrate. If you are going to be keeping a lot of rooted plants, sometimes it may be tempting to go with sand. Sand is not always the best for plants to root into. If you do decide to go that route, you may need to mix it with other substrates. One substrate that I really like to use here at Josh's Frogs is known as Fluval Stratum. We do have a number of fluorite sea chem products as well. Essentially, this is going to be very nutrient rich, kind of makes your pH a little lower, makes things a little more natural for your animals. It is a little bit dirty, but almost any substrate you use for an aquarium will need to be rinsed thoroughly, and even after rinsing, will need to settle for a day or two. So you can do a Paludarium Sand if you want to do plants that are mostly mosses, floating. If you're doing things that are going to be tied down to driftwood or glued down to driftwood, you can just do sand by itself. And we have a product here called Josh's Frogs Aquarium Paludarium Sand. It's a nice black color, nice fine texture. Great for fish like to sift in the substrate, like cory cats and other types of loaches and catfish and bottom feeders. So a little tip, once you've decided on your gravel, let's say you're going with the stratum, which I think is a great choice. Once you've rinsed it, you want to add it to your aquarium. We'll get this one out of the way for now. So you want to add it to your aquarium. And another tip that's worth considering is how you want the gravel to be shaped in your aquarium. Typically, if this is the front of your aquarium right here, the best way to shape your gravel is to have things so it's a little sloped. So it's higher in the back, lower in the front. And what this it gives you the illusion of depth, and it also allows some of the organic matter, uneaten food, fish poop, things like that to sort of collect in the front where it's easier to siphon out. Now, the depth of substrate you want to use is going to vary depending, again, on the types of plants you want to use, assuming you are doing live plants, and in most cases for natural aquariums you are. You want typically enough depth, especially if you're using like sword plants or Valsneria or things with large root systems. You want to have a decent amount of depth so that they have good, so they have room for the roots to grow and to take hold. A lot of the shallower root system plants and the things that typically are foreground plants don't need as much substrate. So you can see here we're sort of smoothing it out. And once you've gotten the shape of the gravel that you want, when you go to add water, a lot of times you can use a saucer or like those little clay saucers they use for plants, things like that. Set it on the substrate and add your water without disturbing the gravel. Like I said, this planted substrate in almost all cases is going to be a little messy. When you do fill your water, when you add water to the aquarium, we have a product on the website called Clear Choice. This will help clarify your water once you get the filter running and all that, and it's able to bind up the dust and the dirt so that your mechanical filter is able to filter it out. The next consideration for your tank is what kind of hardscape do you want? And the hardscape refers to the driftwood, the rocks, the other things that are going to make up the non-living portion of your aquarium that can add to the visual appeal. There are many different types of driftwood on the market, many types of rocks. There are many types of rocks on the market. You just want to make sure that whenever possible, you're seeking out things that are aquarium safe. And what we mean by that is we mean things that aren't going to leach chemicals, leach minerals too heavily in the water. The exception to that is that there's something on the market called Texas Holy Rock. It's this stuff right here, a really heavy rock. This is commonly marketed for African cichlid tanks because it does naturally buffer the water and because African cichlids like that. If you're ever uncertain about a rock that you encounter, now we don't recommend ever going out into the wild, taking an unknown rock, any piece of wood, throwing it into your aquarium. In the case of different types of driftwoods or different types of branches and things like that, there are some that are very toxic to fish, things like lilac. There's things like pine and cedar that just will wreak havoc on your aquarium and will mold and won't do very well. But if you're looking at rocks and you're counting them in the aquarium store, you have all these various types of rocks. We got dragonstone here, which is a popular aquascaping rock. We've got rainbow slate. Typically, if it's granite-based or quartz-based, it's said to be safe. But one little test you can do, if you have just a little bit of vinegar, white distilled vinegar at home, trusty syringe, or you can just pour it on. I'm going to demonstrate this with a little bit of crushed coral. So crushed coral has a lot of calcium carbonate, which leaches into your aquarium, and oftentimes, well, almost always it raises your pH. And how you want to know is you add an acid to anything that's going to leach minerals, anything that's high in carbonate hardness. Start to hear it, but it's starting to fizz. You can see that fizzing down there. The fizzing reaction is that it's reacting to the acid, which means it's going to release minerals into your aquarium. Now take this test to, say, the slate right here, and there's no fizzing whatsoever. So these ones are considered not going to alter your pH, safe. So there are a lot of rocks that are perfectly good choices for your aquarium. It's basically the eye of the beholder, whatever you decide that you like. If you like a blue color, if you like the reddish color of the dragonstone right here. And basically you can sort of scape it however you like. We're not going to go too in depth in this video on the different types of philosophies when it comes to hardscaping and planting. That'll be another time. But typically, you want to create a focal point, you want to have some depth, you want to have some interest. A lot of these rocks will look more vibrant when they're underwater. So this sort of dry stone right here will look a lot nicer once it's submerged. Other options, we have different pebbles on the website. These are polished stones that are inert, safe for your aquarium. We've got different shades of these. This is, oh goodness, this one's called Pink Jade. We got one here that is called Caramel Agate. And you can sort of, let's just open this one right here. This is going to be the caramel. I think it kind of complements the color of the dragonstone I just put in here. So we can sort of put these, it just doesn't have to be any specific. Usually these are more of a foreground, these stones, just because they're a lot smaller. You just sort of place them throughout. So this bag came with about 7 rocks, pretty good size, perfect. This is a 10-gallon. If you're doing a 10-gallon, probably one of these bags more than enough. If you're doing a 20 or 30, I want 2. Other things you can consider, driftwood. Like I said, want to be careful about branches and things from outside. The other consideration with driftwood and other types of wood that you would add to the aquarium is that a lot of times when they're sold, they're dry and they're not able to immediately sink. Things like mopani wood, the spider wood we have here, it's a nice piece. Things like this tend to sink a little better. Things like the cholla wood over here, which is actually a cactus skeleton. These things will float for a few days, but they'll eventually become waterlogged and sink. The other thing is that they do tend to give off tannins, which will make your water kind of a rich brown orange shade. Some people don't like that. If you don't like that, you might choose like Mopani wood or harder driftwood. The sinks and doesn't release as much tannins, but it's sort of unavoidable to an extent. You will probably have to use something like Purigen in your filter to help absorb those tannins. Sometimes when you do enough water changes, over time it kind of goes away a little bit. If you are going for that really natural look though, I think tannins are really nice. So we have lots of different options with these. There's different branching sort of pieces. We've got Malaysian Driftwood. This is a sinkable. This is pretty thick. This is our Galapagos brand. I think a lot of these tend to sink right away. I've used a few of them in aquariums here. Any of these aquariums that you set up, you're going to want to let them soak for a few days, let the water add some clear choice, let it clear up. You may need to soak your driftwood in advance to get it to sink before you put it in your aquarium. So just for the sake of adding a little bit of driftwood to this tank, we're going to go ahead and take this piece here. We do have different sizes available. There's smaller and larger sizes. Something like this you might use to sort of break up the line between like plants and like the foreground, taller plants. We can go over those in a minute here. Other options for things to create a natural effect. We have different types of leaf litter on the website. A lot of these are marketed towards reptiles. They are perfectly safe for your aquarium as well. We do sell a lot of almond leaves. These are particularly popular with tadpoles. They will lower the pH. Any of these things that release tannins and break down the water, they tend to lower the pH naturally. So if you're not looking to have a lower pH, you may avoid something like this, but a lot of shrimp, especially snails, love to scavenge on the biofilm that forms on these over time, and they do have to be replaced periodically. But say something like this, you could add some almond leaves. We sell them in 5-packs. And for a 10-gallon tank, a 5-pack is probably pretty good. They will take a little bit, about a day or so to sink. You could also do things like the live oak, the oak leaf litter. This stuff can be scattered throughout. And it tends to break down a little faster than the almond leaves, but can also be kind of nice. So we're going to add a little bit of something in the background, sort of add some interest. So those are your basic hardscape options for your natural aquarium. The next step is to add plants. A lot of times, like I said, if you're using sand and stuff, or even if you just want to like make your driftwood a little more natural looking, you can attach plants to the driftwood. We have a plant like that here. This is called Anubius. I think this is a Barteri or Nana variety. You can see it has a nice rhizome. A lot of times you can either use fishing line to tie it down sort of artistically like this if you wanted to, or you can use what we have on our website that's known as Flourish Glue. This glue is safe for plants, can be used on damp driftwood, and usually you want to let it dry for a little bit before you put it in the aquarium, but it dries pretty quick. And you can sort of glue that down. We have different mosses available on the website. So a lot of times we sell like this Java moss right here in clumps. This is kind of a smaller piece that I pulled out of one of my aquariums, but we sell, I think, a little bit larger maybe. And this stuff grows really well in low light. Same with Anubius, these are very low tech. You can sort of glue the moss down if you wanted to different parts of your hardscape. And then we have a lot of tissue cultured plants on our website. We do have a tissue cultured moss, a pearl moss right here. We've got a number of foreground plants. We've got like hair grass right here, which is a great foreground plant. Now, when we sell these tissue cultured plants, what that means is that they're pest-free, disease-free, snail-free, good stuff. but they are a little small and delicate, and they're grown in like a type of gel. So we're gonna go ahead and open this one right here. So this is our mini hairgrass, basically. You can see it right here. If you're trying to plant these, a lot of times you're like, man, how do I get this into the substrate? We have lots of tools for that. We do sell like these tweezers right here that can help you sort of gently push them into the substrate. We do have a tool right here that has like a little, kind of a little attachment at the end that sort of, you can see the picture. Right here, it will allow you to sort of take the plant, usually bigger plants this works better with, and sort of push it into the substrate. I've got some Valsneria right here, and Valsneria grows with runners. So this is the whole family of Valsneria right here. You can separate them like this. Doesn't do them any harm. And these ones are typically a background plant. These are kind of babies still. Valsneria can grow very tall. And if you're using a tool like this, you may kind of attach it at the root right here and sort of go in the back and just very gently push it into the substrate. I like to use my fingertip like this. And you'll probably need to use your fingers a little bit to sort of tamp it down. Once these things root, they'll stay put. This is kind of nice because it also has the scrubbing tool at the end, so it's kind of an all-in-one. You can also go through and scrub your aquarium. Kind of a nice little thing right there. Now, the tissue culture will return to this. You do want to be kind of gentle with how you remove it, but it should all come out like this. Typically, I'll kind of rinse it out, try to get some of that gel out. I'll use this here. I'll go ahead and push these guys in. So we'll use this here to sort of break up the hair grass, but you want to get all that gel out as much as you can before you can plant it. And once you've isolated, you can totally separate this. You can plant it in clusters. Typically this is a foreground plant, so you want it more in the front for the best effect. There's foreground, background, mid-ground plants. Typically your carpeting plants are considered a foreground. Things like this will kind of need a little higher light, so if you've skimped on your lighting, you might want to avoid some of the carpeting plants, or you may want to bump it up a little bit and maybe do a little more fertilizing. But if you're trying to plant these much more shallow roots, you can sort of just stick them in like that. And you can go through. Now typically, so I'm kind of planting this dry right now, but typically it's best to plant after you've added the water. This is so it doesn't shift around when you're adding the water, because you can plant this beautifully right now, and then you add the water. Even with the dish, sometimes things get uprooted. I've done it before, it's not fun. So, but yeah, you can just sort of go through and add the foreground plants however you see fit. It's probably more dramatic to sort of put them in sort of similar vicinity. So the last little tip I have for aquascaping, once you've got your tank set up and your natural aquarium looks really nice and it's cycled and the plants are growing, sometimes you encounter the problem that the plants are growing too well, you have to trim them. We do have a product for that. We have these little scissors here that can very effectively trim any of the hair grass. Can grow a little wily after a while, kind of like mowing your lawn. So I didn't add any stem plants in here. Things like bacopa, things like Ludwigia, things like that will grow very, very tall. If you want them to be a little bushier, sometimes you have to trim them down, and that'll make them more dramatic and less stemmy. Things like Valsneria right here that we planted in the back will actually grow up and like over Sometimes it makes a nice effect where it goes over your aquarium, but these can grow quite tall. Occasionally you might have to trim those a little bit as well. Anubius is very slow growing. Mosses, you can usually just pull out clumps. Now you have some idea where to start when you're looking at the hardscape, when you're looking at your plants. If you need any tips on plants that are easy for your aquarium, we have a blog on that, Top 10 Aquarium Plants, I believe it's called. And feel free to reach out with any questions about any driftwood or rocks or anything that you're curious about and you're not sure. I hope you learned something today, and I hope you enjoy your natural aquarium.
Thanks so much for watching this video. Here at Josh's Frogs, bringing nature to your doorstep is more than just our mission, it's our passion. We want you to have the most successful experience possible, so we're going to be here for you before, during, and after your purchase, whether that's with our captive-bred animals, plants, insects, or the wide variety of their care products on our website. You always have access to our dedicated customer service team, on-site nature experts, hundreds of free articles via our blog, and many more videos right here on our YouTube channel, so be sure to subscribe. We're always happy to help. Just shoot us an email or give us a call. You can find all of this information and more at joshsfrogs.com. Thanks again, and see you next time.